Well, hi guys. I'm Ness. I'm a manager with the Clinical Trials Research Unit on the cancer side. I know some of you. Shane works in our unit here, and I've met Jay a couple of times over the past couple of years. I've been in WVU for almost 3 years. Running the cancer clinical program, the research nurses and data managers, and I'm also the executive director for a nonprofit here at the West Virginia Cancer Clinical Trials Network. So a couple years ago, I was part of this initial team that really spearheaded getting us registered as a SOCR site to offer research credentialing to our staff here. It's been well attended, and we've been very well represented over the number of years. This is our 3rd testing year. I believe we have 16 people registered from what Samantha told me for the exam, and that's great. I think it's wonderful. So hopefully, now that we're getting this volume of registered or certified SOCR people, we are looking at starting up a local chapter. So after you have your certification, don't be surprised if you continue to hear from me, because we'd like to do some sort of local chapter meetings, maybe even in conjunction with ACRP, certified professionals, and see what we can do to just keep bringing continuing education and maintain your certification throughout your next couple of years. All right, so I'm going to talk today about research, the clinical research coordinators and our staff, and the roles and responsibilities that we have. For those who attended the boot camp talk that I gave a couple of weeks ago, a lot of this is going to be repetitive, similar to that one. I'm trying to do a little bit more referencing to ICH and GCP guidelines that you'll see as we go. But basically, we're going to go over the key areas for ethics, protocol compliance, consent, recruitment, management of subjects, documentation, data management, and finances. Now, the research team. This talk kind of rolls up everybody who's not a sponsor or an investigator or the IRB. So we have everybody else that's here. And I know here we have some folks here who work in regulatory, some people who may work in the clinical side, sub-investigators, data coordinators, lab technicians, your clinical team partners in the infusion center, statistician, and of course the study subject themselves are part of that team. Now, you know, the Cancer Center, we're a larger research unit, so all of our staff have very individual roles, but we're going to talk here and try and encompass everybody's role as if they were an ounce. And so they were the research coordinator, they were the nurse, they were the data coordinator, regulatory, budget person, finance. They're kind of sort of the research coordinator outside of the principal investigator. And so as you said, the larger unit you have, you may get a little bit more specialized in what your role is and be a little bit more knowledgeable of your area, but then now for the SOCR certification are coming to learn more about what your other team members do. All right, so as you heard in your investigator roles and responsibilities, the principal investigator is the one who overall is delegated to be accountable for the scientific integrity of the protocol. They're responsible for all the medical management of your patients and looking at your complications and your attribution of any side effects that may happen. They're also the final decision maker regarding eligibility. They assume the administrative responsibility of the trial. And lastly, that's most important for you as a research staff member, they ensure that qualified personnel are trained and delegated appropriately. So these are just as you're reviewing your GCP and FDA guidelines. You'll see this repeated over and over again about the responsibilities of the investigators. Now, in your research prep, has anybody found responsibilities of a research coordinator? Do those exist in federal regulations? No. So there are no FDA guidances or regulations or GCP actual official information out there about the responsibilities of the research coordinator. Most of it is all rolled up under the delegation of duties of the investigator. So we're kind of going to go over what may be delegated to you, but overall, the FDA guidance documents are all talking about investigator responsibilities. So the most important thing for the investigators to know is that if you're working with them as a research staff member, that they are going to supervise you. So if you guys do something wrong, have fraudulent data, have a human subject risk issue, It's really, you guys will have some issue of getting in trouble and not being non-compliant, but it's all going to roll out to your principal investigator. So that PI has to make sure what is appropriately delegated, what is considered to be adequate training, what is considered to be adequate supervision, and what are their responsibilities for their oversight of the other parties. Make sure you do review. That's a big document for you guys to review in preparation for your exam. So the biggest way that we document delegation of authority is delegation of authority log, which I'm sure all of you guys are very familiar with and working in research for as long as you have so far. That's how your investigator will delegate broad responsibility to anybody who's involved in that clinical research team. You want to make sure that if you develop your own, if you're sponsoring your own study, that you have clear indications of the key areas in regards to data collection, adverse event collection, informed consent, eligibility review, and also that you have internal SOP that's the standing how this log is completed and then how and when your training should be administered. On the top of your delegation authority log, all the principal investigators should also have as documentation of training a training log in their file. Now, PI won't probably say, oh, I've got to create a training log. They're going to look at you as the research study team to make sure that you have an up-to-date training log. And that if you are the lead study coordinator, this may be your primary responsibility to conduct the training. Once that you have adequate training from your PI in the study, he will delegate that you to have continued oversight for the length of the study. All right, so we're going to go over those key areas and under the role of a research coordinator. So very quickly, this is a slide I shared the other day at the boot camp. What's the value in having a research coordinator? Some investigators try and do a study on their own if they're just doing a small retrospective. We know once you're over on the clinical environment and in new drug development or new device development that it's really impossible to be an N-of-1 and conduct a study appropriately and covering all your bases with that. So really we're here to provide resources to our principal investigator to help them do that study along appropriately. Now, nurse or non-nurse? Who here is a research coordinator or on the clinical side? I know Jay is. I know change regulatory. What are you? Your technicians? Okay. And your regulatory? Quality. Okay. So for the research coordinators, the big thing, a debate out there also is if we're going to use a nurse or a non-nurse. We're going to here to talk under the scope of the research coordinator being a nurse when it comes to some of the adverse event capturing and consenting. But if we are using non-licensed personnel or if you as a technician are delegated on a research protocol, then you have to make sure that you're operating within your scope of licensure, or if you are non-licensed, that you have appropriate training and delegation to what you're allowed to, what tasks you're permitted to do. A good reference tool also is to have a scope of practice. So I think, does the CPRC have a scope of practice policy that can say by role what you guys are able to complete in tasks? I thought they did with their FDAs. All right, so functional areas, these are the 8 areas I talked about on the introductory slide with our agenda. So first area, the most important one is protocol compliance. So when we're talking about protocol compliance, we're talking that you have that knowledge of that protocol, the primary and secondary objectives. Am I being filmed or is it just my voice?
Just your voice.
Okay, so I can walk. I don't like standing by. So with protocol compliance, we're going to make sure that you understand any process procedure that's required by your sponsors, that you participate in any feasibility discussions, which are probably a key area when you're talking about doing a trial, is to make sure this is something that your site can do. Based on your knowledge of your institutional capabilities, what limitations you may have, if it's safe for you to give that therapy within your clinic, and making sure that you have a population of interest that's applicable to this study. You want to make sure that you collaborate with the research team to identify barriers, implement procedures for maintaining their participation, that you participate in providing any information to the IRB so that you're pairing up with your regulatory team members and making sure that anything that has to be communicated to them is done so in a timely manner. That you facilitate and participate in preparation for any meetings with monitors and auditors. You want to make sure that you can ensure the validity of research results by having timely, accurate, and complete reporting of any adverse events, any unanticipated problems, any deviations, violations, and non-compliance to your IRB and sponsor. And lastly, you want to make sure that you collaborate with your PI, pharmacy, and everybody else to make sure that we have appropriate tracking of any experimental drugs or devices. All right, so when we're new to clinical research, we always say, how many years have you guys been involved in clinical trials? Who's been over 2 years? You guys do 2 years cyber certification. Who's over 5 years? Over 5 years? Questionable? Okay. So how many months did it take for you to say that you knew what you were doing and everything about clinical research?
Still learning.
Still learning, yes. Jay?
I'm still learning a little here.
Still learning here and there. All right. Shane, how about you?
I'm still learning.
Still learning. So when I am training nurses, and I train primarily for the past 18 years, I've been focused in cancer research, but I was doing non-cancer research prior to that. A lot of them come to me with a number of years of experience in the clinical environment, and they're used to going on the floor within a couple of months, being really solid, really comfortable with what they're doing. When they get to that 90-day orientation with me, they sit down and like, we still feel like we know nothing. So, I say that at 6 months, you're going to be more independent and more comfortable, but I really don't look to say that I have a research coordinator that's fully oriented for me to give them any project and for them to take it off on their own without any questions till that year anniversary. It can take that long, just because we deal with different types of sponsors, different types of IRBs, different types of here. We think clinical research should be very bright and straight and black and white, and it's a lot of gray. So when we're talking about FDA regs and GCP guidelines, you'll find the same thing. There's still a lot of gray. So when you're preparing for the certification exam, really lean on the core of what a research coordinator does and our primary FDA guidances on those investigator responsibilities, and that will lead you through this exam very easily. But getting back to this, I'm just saying knowledge is power, because within your 2 to 5 years of experience that you've had, you are still building on this. So make sure you become more specialized probably in your disease areas, like if you are seeing certain diseases, that you know what your patient population is, you know what the standard treatment regimen is, what the standard side effects may be, so that you'll be able to, you'll be able to recognize what is normal for those patients and what may be related to the trial itself. Learning your protocol, just learning your key eligibility, your side effect management, reporting requirements and such. Okay, so we're going to review the feasibility. When we look at our feasibility, it's what we talked about before. Make sure you have the right subjects, the right personnel, the right lab equipment. We've had a couple trials that weren't quite feasible for us to do because we didn't have the right correlative lab processing machinery. And you just talk to your sponsor about purchasing that. But really make sure that you have that support and the capabilities of doing that research. Now, did we do the sponsors talk? Is that next week?
Not sure.
Do you guys have the sponsor roles? Is that next week? Okay. All right, so they'll talk about sponsors' roles and what a sponsor has to do with looking at feasibility. So I'm going to skip over a little bit of that. When we open up a trial as a research coordinator, there's 3 different things that we have to make sure that we have. 1, your feasibility, as we mentioned, your department approvals. 2, budget, contract, and finances. And 3 is your regulatory approvals with that. IRB approvals, any other core committees that you may have to be working with. All right, so in regulatory, Shane will probably talk to you more about this area, but we have to make sure that before you open up a study, that you as an investigator team, that you have a signed protocol. There's always that front page that your local PI has to sign and date, accepting that protocol. You have to make sure they have an updated CV and biosketch, any sort of human subject protection that's required by your IRB or the sponsor. Sometimes they have their own GCP or human subject protection training requirements. On file, you have to have all your lab certifications and lab normal ranges for your institution or any lab that you may be using through that study. So if you're going to be sending labs to Quest, you want to make sure that you have their certifications and lab normals as well. Of course, your IRB approval and that's an IRB approval letter. Check your date, check your all your information, make sure your titles, everything there matches. Any other safety committee approvals that you may have to have for radiation safety and biosafety. An informed consent has to be approved by the IRB and the sponsor. Some people get so excited about getting this template from the sponsor, they merge it to their local thing, they send it to the IRB, and they forget to send it back to that sponsor to review before they go back to the IRB. So that consent form has to be reviewed by your sponsor and your IRB and have approved, including your HIPAA language, any recruitment materials that are going out to patients. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Financial disclosure forms. Many sponsors will have their own financial disclosure or conflict of interest form that they have to sign. Of course, the sort of background of everything that we do here is that FDA 1572, which is the investigator signature and commitment to run the study, according to 21 CFR 312. And then if we're doing a sponsor internally, then you also have to make sure that the study is registered on some sort of public medium. Most of us use clinicaltrials.gov. You have to have it registered and able to publish your results. Now, you cannot enroll until all of these elements are completed, and your sponsor has acknowledged that. Clinicaltrials.gov, if you're not familiar with that, this is just a link to the public search engine.
At what point do they have to have it on there?
Clinicaltrials.gov.
It just be right before the first patient is
Before the
actually
patient
enrolled?
is enrolled.
Okay.
It has to finish its registration before you enroll the first patient. And I've done it that day. People have started that process and then not finalized it. And this is something that it's not something that you just go on and register and you're done instantaneously. They review it, they may come back and have questions with your primary objectives or some of your stats section. So you do have to give yourself ample time there to make sure that is approved and posted before you enroll your first patient.
So I'm assuming the sponsor for us.
So the sponsor is the person who's really responsible for doing it. So you would only be doing it locally if you were the sponsor and the investigator. So it was an internal trial. I would look, if you're working with a small sponsor or one other center, just go in there and confirm that it's registered. We keep clinicaltrials.gov IDs within our Encore CTMS for the cancers or for the CTRU staff. So we know if it's registered, we'll have that number on there before we activate. But it's always a good thing to go and check if you're working with just one other institution that that's done. Site initiation visit, make sure that you keep good notes from your site initiation visit, and that is really the sponsor's obligation to make sure that this is conducted. Investigator responsibility to make sure that people are there to be trained, but you as a coordinator are going to be the one that's going to be facilitating any of the dialogue at that site initiation visit. Protocol startup. So when you're doing on your protocol activation and looking at that communication with your staff, you have to look at everybody else who may be involved in that clinical research program. FDA, when they come to audit, they'll be looking at those training logs, not just of you as the research nurse, but if Jay is working with an OR tech and they're doing a medical device implant, does that OR technician know what their role may be within that procedure? If they're working with an infusion nurse in the cancer center, do they know what type of side effects to look at as this chemo is infusing if there's a chance for an anaphylactic reaction? So you want to make sure that you communicate to your clinical team members. Also make sure that you have any sort of recruitment advertisements, drug orders with your investigational pharmacy team. Create any source docs. We'll give you some examples of those later on, and patient compliance diaries. Then after your trial is open, you want to make sure that you maintain your red files. This is the same thing as I mentioned, just updating as changes come up, amendments come up. Any correspondence to and from the IRB should be in your red files, and any correspondence with your sponsor has to be in your red files. That is probably the most challenging thing because we send a lot of emails back and forth. And some sponsors, you'll be calling them. So if you're doing a lot of FinCoff communication, I would either summarize that in an email or have a Fin log that you can have some sort of documentation of you working with your sponsors. FDA will look for that as a part of your regulatory files. Enrollment logs, drug logs, lab manuals, biosamples. Study closeouts. So the sponsor really will have a responsibility to come out and close out your site. And then usually the sponsor will provide a summary of the trial outcomes to submit to your IRB. They have to do that for their GCP regulations. Retention of records for you at your site. Make sure that you have, keep your documents until 2 years after the last approval. If you're using ICH regions, so if you're doing an international trial, it's going to be 2 years of any possible ICH region that may be looking for approval for that. I recently had a study that they know that they're going to be registering the drug in Europe. And they're saying that this is going to take a much longer process to get European approval. So while we in the US would say it's usually 2 years, 5 years, we have our own FDA regulations, the ICH regulations, they want us to maintain records for up to 15 years, knowing that this is going to be a much more extensive approval time. So just really kind of look at what your baseline guidelines are for ICH and FDA. Okay, who's involved in consenting? Is anybody involved in consenting? Jay is. Okay. All right, so informed consent, that's a whole other training thing that we could break out and do 2 hours of just what informed consent is. But that's a key area for the research coordinator that you'll be working in line with your principal investigator. You'll be primary responsibilities, identify and intervene to address, facilitate any barriers to effective informed consent discussion. You describe and abide by institutional policy and process for informed consent, including maintaining IRB approvals and amending as it's required. Collaborate with your PI to ensure that there's an initial and ongoing consent process is performed and documented. Right? So that's also part of the regulations. Not just that you're talking to these patients, but you're documenting that informed consent process. Assess the ongoing consent through your discussion with your subjects, reinforcement of education. Ensure timely reconsenting as needed. Develop your supplemental materials, and then ensure compliance with consenting. We've had the IRB talk. I think Steve did that, right? Did Steve do that? All right, so he'll kind of talk to you about the overview of the IRB and what they look at for human subject protection. So who can obtain consent? So your PI really is the one who's primarily focused. We on the Cancer Center, nurses can't prescribe medical treatment. So for us, the informed consent discussion has to come from the physician because that consent is usually a prescription-led treatment option to them. So we have our doctors that do the initial talk, and then they'll pair up with a research nurse. Our non-nurses will work on non-interventional trials and consent them for that. But it's really internal and delegation on who's key, who's allowed to consent. At my prior institution, nurses did all the consenting. We did everything with them. So it's really kind of, that's more local knowledge. You'll see on the delegation log on the FDA regs, you can be delegated. So it is legal for you guys to do that. The only thing that we have to make sure that you're knowledgeable about the process, you're knowledgeable about the protocol, and that you can determine if this patient's well informed and capable of making that decision. Now, there is some short forms on the FDA guidances, and I know the regulations themselves are so dry and really, really hard to read. But I would say go online and download, if they have to provide them from SOPRA, the guidance sheets. You know, there will be an FDA guidance sheet on obtaining informed consent. There's an FDA guidance sheet as being an investigator and your responsibilities. They are much more abbreviated and much more relatable to what you actually do, with a lot of questions, answers of real case scenarios. So they'll let you get a little bit more comfortable with this.
What was that again?
On the FDA website, they'll have FDA guidance documents, not just the policies. I know there's an FDA guidance on obtaining informed consent. I believe there is one on eligibility enrollment. There's one on investigator responsibilities. They've been updating and releasing them. Have you looked at those recently?
Yeah.
Okay. What else is on there? But it's a little bit much easier to interpret than reading.
Yeah, they're a lot more condensed.
Yes.
Easy to follow.
Yeah.
Contents.
Yes, and using real life language.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just some, and it's really tiny in your sheet here. Anybody who's wanting any more information or details, please just let me know after the meeting and I'll be glad to share anything else with us. This is just saying, you know, for the informed consent process, you start with the IRB to make sure you've met the legal requirements, work with your investigator and treating physician as a treatment thing and sort of building up the knowledge for the patient, for the study coordinator, making sure that you do document this, and remember it's not informed consent form, it's the informed consent process. Okay, that's going to be another key thing that we're going to be looking at, that you're identifying that informed consent is not just a one-time thing, that it's a continuous process. All right. Make sure that you have consent prior to any protocol-specific procedures. Don't have a patient go get their labs drawn that don't process them until after consent. They can't be stuck for those labs until that informed consent document is signed. So you cannot do anything that's required by that protocol that you would not be doing outside the scope of standards of care. Make sure that it's done as a discussion. Make sure that you have quiet and privacy, and always make sure that they are given the time. That goes back to the Belmont report, respecting that patient's autonomy. Patient recruitment. So patient recruitment, big thing that we do as coordinators. Implement your recruitment plans to identify and assess individuals who might be eligible for trials, taking into consideration any entry criteria, required procedures, and any other potential factors. Identify and develop a process to overcome any barriers, whether it's an underserved population, not uncommon for us in West Virginia to have to offer transportation for our patients. A lot of them don't have the ability to drive as far as they have to come to Morgantown, especially if we need them to come in consecutive days. So we'll provide hotel rooms or overnight facilities. Institutional or community-based resources. You may need to talk to church groups if you're doing normal volunteer research, going out to different walks or parades or anything that you may have approved recruitment materials for, to sort of promote your clinical trial. And then working with your referring physicians. So for recruitment, by standard legal requirement, you can do a limited chart review if you have that to directly relate to eligibility. You don't want to do a full chart review until you have a signed consent. Why is that? Why can't you sit there and go through all 20 eligibility criteria before Dr. Smith's clinic to make sure that Jane Doe is eligible for that trial?
Is it because you don't have the consent for that specific questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Medicare questions, the actual study consent.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to have that study consent. So if that patient is deemed a well, here by just being a patient of WV medicine, they've given the preemptive approval to the just the initial screening. So we're allowed to go in and look at a clinic and say, Dr. Smith has Jane Doe who has lung cancer, I have a lung cancer trial. I'm going to go talk to Jane Doe. Once she gives me consent, we'll see if maybe she's more eligible for this trial. So you can do, very quick, limited chart review. They have the right pathology marker, they have the right prior treatments, whatever it may be. But you can't do that extensive review until you have that full consent. You don't have their permission to go into their PHI. Whatever you do, never collect any identifiable information until they consent. Your sponsor wants to keep screening logs. Screening logs are okay. Screening logs are appropriate. Pre-screening logs are okay and appropriate, but there can't be PHI on them. So some of your sponsors will look for pre-screening logs, that you're screening OR schedules, you're screening clinics. They'll want you to put initials on there. That is within FDA regulations for you to do that. Just make sure you don't have the PHI elements on there. You may do external referrals, community outreach, as I mentioned as well. Make sure any recruitment materials. What is the big key on recruitment materials? What can you not do?
The cohorts them.
I'm sorry?
Either cohorts them or offer something that in return.
Right. So your sponsor usually provide a template of what your advertising materials are going to be, but you as a research coordinator working with your investigator may be, hey, we want to get these college students on there. Put on there, we'll give them a $25 Starbucks gift card. It's really big type, and then a little big talk to them about the research study is, and that will hook them up to an EMG machine for follow-up. Will that work? No, it's not going to work. So you have to make sure that you're not coercing those patients. So these are just some examples I pulled from Google Images of different things that they have. One looking for a patient, they have the acne treatment one. And they, have to just give the key things like qualified participants receive at no cost, what they're going to receive from it. They can't really give them what their compensation is going to be. And the IRB, as you heard before, will determine what's considered adequate compensation. You'll see at the top, there's one, if your patient has chest pain, refer them for a clinical trial. So that would gear towards other medical professionals and looking at that. And then at the bottom, you'll see it's an ad that a lot of us have seen for clinical trials for Alzheimer's patients. So you'll see for COPD that will be out there in the public as well.
So they can be tricky with the wording of that too, like up being paid up to, and they can actually put an amount because it says that statement.
They can't say up to, we don't have to say up to an amount. We don't usually put a dollar amount. I don't think they usually have a dollar amount, do they? If fully completed? I don't know that an IRB is okay with that. Huh.
Like our radio, like currently, like even our radio ad is saying
It says up, you can receive up to, I think, like
$2,000
$2,000 or whatever like that. As little as 20 up to.
What do you say?
Sorry, the previous slide.
Yes.
I do stroke trials and I have to go through thousands of patients to find someone who's eligible.
Uh-huh.
So you're saying you can't look at, I mean, you said that you could look at like some stuff online, I mean, some stuff in EMR, but
Yeah.
not other stuff on here.
So you do key, what you consider like a limited chart review. All right, so you don't want to go in depth in their medical history. That would be really sort of doing a full chart review with that patient. If you're looking for a stroke patient who has other key things, like for us, a cancer patient who's newly diagnosed and received one or has never received any chemotherapy, or diagnosed and received one prior line. So we'll go look, all right, they're diagnosed with this cancer, they've received carbon-taxol, one line, and we'll kind of stop there. We will look to say they can't have a heart history, they can't have neurological history, they can't have any of that. We don't want to go into any other really in-depth medical review until you have that consent from the patient. So you're looking for stroke patients.
If I did it that way, we'd have to shut down.
Yeah, so you're looking for your key, that limited chart, you're looking for a stroke
If I
patient.
consented everyone before I checked the 30 different criteria, I mean, that's, it would work.
Yes, so really ideally you can do a limited chart review of those key criteria. And stroke are more acute, so you may have different, different processes and things within your treatment, but generally they'll say that you get to conduct a complete full medical review until that consent. You go and you consent that patient, and you may be doing it at the same time. I need to confirm your eligibility, right? We don't want to always.
You don't have an issue with having to consent 100 people to get one person who's actually eligible.
You do, like I said, you look at your key criteria. You do whatever it can eliminate for your main things. And you do that. So we eliminate our main items that are going to weed out the majority of the patients. So for us, if it's 3 criteria, if it's you, if it's 10 of the criteria, that's what it is.
So I see.
But your key things, but I'm not going to go there and pull cardiac records and pull other contributing, other concomitant diseases or areas that may impact them that are more peripheral. So look at your key, your key factors.
Okay.
Stroke is going to be different because you have a little bit more acute time. You have that time, so your eligibility probably isn't as probably in depth as ours also. It's not unusual for a cancer trial that will have 30 or 40 eligibility criteria for their patients to go in. And, it'll be 6 labs of 1 eligibility criteria, this lab will have that. So it can be just, it really depends on what your trial is that you're looking at. Yeah, not to impede your trial, it's just to make sure that you're keeping within HIPAA too. All right, here with that. All right. So managing your trials. My halfway. This isn't 1 hour or 1. All right, I got speed up. So managing, making sure you're collaborating with your investigator for eligibility, you have adherence to the protocol schedule of events, that you coordinate all your scheduling and procedures, and that you have successful completion of any correlative components. Look at your subject adherence to the protocol, any subject education and compliance issues that you may have. Make sure you're looking and collaborating with your investigator. Looking at adverse events, I want to talk to you a little bit more about that part. So, Eligibility. We always want to make sure that you're using your eligibility criteria in the protocol. I always refer to your full protocol. There's a lot of sponsors who abbreviate eligibility in their worksheets. So make sure you're kind of working through everything in that protocol document itself. Collect your source documents. We're going to talk a little bit about source data and source docs in the next slide. And that the source documents are your actual testing results. For example, the original pathology report over a physician note stating that they have that cancer. Ensure all required testing has been completed within the time frame. Sometimes there's labs that have to be done within 24 hours, 72 hours, 7 days, 30 days. Make sure that you remain compliant with that. You don't want to end up with all these major deviations on your study when it comes time to audit and question your validity of who you entered in the study based on having outdated testing. You as a research coordinator, you'll be doing all this work. You'll be just going through the process and going through the motions and doing that. But remember, in the end, it's your PI and your physicians are going to be responsible. Make sure it circles back to your MDs. What do we mean by adverse events? So everybody familiar with what an adverse event is? Okay, so I know you talked about with an IRB as well. You can review these on the slides if you want to for your own self-learning. So ICH, GCP, and OHRP definitions are similar. FDA has a little bit different language and how they define what adverse event is. So your role as the coordinator, and what we do, we're delegated to take that lead responsibility in assessing our patients and collecting any sort of terminology and grading by our protocol. Physicians, it has to be a licensed physician or mid-level provider that can do attribution. We are not given the ability to diagnose by licensure, so therefore that has to, attribution is sort of relating what that side effect is. That has to be done by a physician. Data team members are responsible for abstracting and transferring anything, observations to the sponsored database. You want to make sure that that language is clear on the coordinator side, that everyone can understand that when you're transferring to the database, that the terminology is similar. And then the regulatory team members will work inside with the nurses, the data people, to report anything to the IRB or FDA when we have to. Again, this all may be Alice, it may be Sally, Alice, Jim, and Jane, depending on how your unit is structured. So basically for AE capture, you collect your data, you'll determine your terminology and grade from whatever that protocol for using MEDRA and CICT-CAE, whatever it is that they may be using. Determine your attribution and expectedness with your protocol, your investigator brochure, and your consent form on what an expected event is for this drug or this treatment regimen. Determine what your reporting requirements will be. That's done through your protocol, site initiation visit training, any sort of other federal regs for what your reporting regulations are to your IRB as well as to your sponsor, and then submit your report as necessary. Which talks about what I reviewed earlier. Now, attribution and expectedness. So, attribution, did Steve go over this in his IRB talk? No? Okay. So attribution does not imply the intervention or procedure was not performed according to clinical standards of care. So if something is attributable to the drug, doesn't mean if it's expected or not expected. This was grade 4 neutropenia, was given as an example. If grade 4 neutropenia might be something that we commonly see with this chemo drug, and so it is related and attributed to the study, but it's also expected. And we're usually talking about elevated reporting. It's not just the grade of the event, but it's also the expectedness of the event. So make sure that you have both of those when you're looking at side effects. And I think I'm on my 4th cycle of recertification for SOFR, so it's been a while since I took the exam, but I believe there were some case examples about attribution and expectedness that other coordinators have talked about. So the FDA definition, it's considered unexpected if not listed on the investigator brochure, if it's not listed at that specificity or severity. So let's say it's common that patients may have some mild nausea. We've seen that. This patient has severe in the hospital receiving nutritional support because they've had so much nausea and vomiting as a side effect of that drug. So that level of nausea and vomiting is much more severe than what they've seen before. So that's an increase in that severity. That will be an unexpected finding. If the investigator brochure is not required or available, Then we also want to look at it's not consistent with whatever risk information we have in our plan. All right. This just kind of talks about the definition differences of OHRP and GCP. I think GCP and FDA will be both on your exam. Common requirements. This is unexpected event requirements are pretty standard. One thing to look for as your research coordinator on here. FDA is always looking for an attribution as it relates to what investigational drug or product. The IRB is looking for an attribution as it relates to their research as a whole. So while the FDA may not want it because it's not related to the drug, but let's say it's related to whatever disease that they had, whether it's stroke, cancer, or anything else that's going on with that patient, the IRB may want it because it's related to that research protocol as a whole. Sponsors could use either one. So it's really having to know what the sponsor is looking at for that. So when you're doing your reporting requirements, start off with what the IRB is going to want and what your sponsor is going to want. Your sponsor will then route it up to your FDA as needed. Deviations. So the other thing that in addition to adverse events, we also may need to report any sort of major protocol deviation or violation that can happen while you're on a clinical trial. That's related to infusion time. It's related to ineligible patients who had who received treatment that shouldn't have gone on the study. It's a major deviation or major violation. Let's say the patient received more drug, like over 10% is usually our threshold. They seem to be okay, but they have an over plus or minus 10% threshold of what was prescribed. In addition, there's also unanticipated problems, what they call UPs. UPs are things like you keep your spreadsheet of all your patients on your laptop and that was stolen. We all know that we're working on the shared drives now or encrypted drives. You don't have that complete potential here with you as you have. But a lot of my staff have a laptop that they work with. We tell them to keep everything on the shared drive, but I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes some of that ends up on your computer. If that's stolen, we need to report that to the IRB because you have that risk for PHI. Product contamination, if investigational pharmacy has some sort of product contamination that's discoverable. This one always makes me laugh. They have this always listed. A staff member becomes ill due to an odor from an IV bag of some investigational product. The patient's fine, but whatever happens, there's a fume or there's a gas when they're making up the drug and the staff member. Basically saying if the people who are conducting the research have a side effect or a problem from it, you have to report that to the IRB as well. Maintaining compliance, which is what we were talking about before. So documentation, you guys have been working in research for a couple of years. It's just heightened. If you don't write it down, it didn't happen. Make sure that you have all documentation of your primary source data, that you develop any source documents, that you use templates or forms to aid your trial implementation. Make sure you educate all your team members, and that helps complete those data forms too. You can have a great form, but if nobody can understand how to use it, then it's not going to be collecting the right data. Make sure that you maintain privacy and confidentiality of any source documents. Ensure all your regulatory documents as well are processed and maintained, and then any reports that you might have to have for regulatory. Now, ICH GCP, they've had these definitions of what source data and source documents can be. We all are familiar enough to know that those are the original records. Source document can be a clinic note, a physician or nurse handwriting note. I don't know, back in the old days before EMRs, it would be paper towels that you take in your chart and you're collecting vital signs and they were keeping the ER. It could be whatever it is that's there. That's that original source. You don't want to take and retype this note that you have handwritten to make it look great. Right? So no, that's no longer the legible at time thing. You want that original source document. Emails, imaging reports, treatment medication orders, lab reports, patient diaries, quality of life things, flow sheets, med listing, pathology reports, any of that are outside facility records. We have a lot of tools. CPRC, I'm sure, has a lot of source document tools that you're working with in your clinical trials. It's helpful just to have a bank of general things. We have new patient checklists, everything has to be done for a new patient to go on trial. The far right is our informed consent process document that actually gets loaded as a smart text phrase and epic for us. Study visit checklist for each visit, what has to be done for each study. Adverse event log that can kind of track everything while the patient's on study. Good to have blanket ones that you could transfer to each and every study and then make them, customize them as you need to. Data management IT. This is pretty cut and dry. You just make sure that you have the data management plan for your trial, going through your queries, making sure that everything is abstracted, recorded in a timely manner, that you can verify everything within your source documents, and that you have some quality control, quality person. So you could probably speak more on this side. Making sure that you have confidentiality as well and security of research. Case report form, that's, you have your source docs, then you have your case report forms. They're not one and the same. You have to make sure that everything that's recorded in your case report form can be backed up in your source documentation. Now, according to GCP 4.9.1, investigator has to sign off on this. We know our investigators don't go into our databases and look at that. I don't. Did your investigator do that?
Sure.
Yeah. So again, delegated duty. All right, they'll delegate that to us usually, but at the end of the trial, they're going to have to sign off on that accuracy. I've had a couple of them that will sit there and call me and be like, hey, I was looking at my writing database on this trial, and it looks like you have a lot of visits that aren't logged in or aren't finished. And you have to explain to them that, well, sometimes it's just the monitor hasn't logged them or whatever it may be. It's great to have investigators that are that well vested and keyed into their trial. But really, at the end of this is usually when they go and just sign the signature page. So this will be delegated to you for the most part. So you have to make sure that everything's been completed, including your header and the identifying items. All amendments have been made, all the adverse events are recorded, all your documentation has been completed and entered.
Can I ask you a question? Source binders, are you having this here recently that sponsors are not giving you like a template? They're saying you have to just make it up on your own because it's a new FDA thing. You heard about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things out there. One is the essential documents resource thing that's coming out from the FDA. The source documentation, and it's actually, I think, a question on my review slide later on. Source documents, it is not a requirement for your sponsor to provide this.
Right.
So if they don't provide, if they're, I don't know that they're, let me restart that. We don't usually get source documents on the cancer side. So for the most part, we just get the protocol schedule of events, and a lot of it falls within standard of care, so it's usually standard documentation. And we make up our in-source document tools, as you saw on the prior page, that is pretty comprehensive for crossover to all the studies. On the non-cancer side of our research unit, that'll be probably more in line to make up a visit, getting the source documents for each time way for their study, and that's what you're talking about. I think a lot of sponsors, not that they're working with CROs, it's just how they're budgeting it and going through what they're required to do. But they're saying that they aren't able to provide this to you?
I've heard different things that then if we miss something, we can say that, oh, you gave us the source document, so it's your fault that we missed 20-something project or something like that.
Oh, yes, yeah. I can see that happening with some of the sponsors I work with. Yeah, they're not required to do that. That was sort of one of their best practice things that they initiated, but it seems like they're starting to streamline their efficiencies too, and are putting that onus on you as a research coordinator, which is good to look at. We talk about financial stewardship. When you're working with these sponsors, figure out how much of this are you going to be developing on your own versus what they're going to be providing you when you're looking at your budget and your finances. Ethics. So ethics, you want to make sure that you're advocating for your clinical trial subjects. Ethics are a PMT with your IRB, you've done your city training. Ethics is something that you should be extremely familiar with, and talking about the Belmont report and Helsinki and your finding principles that we have in our GCP and FDA regulations. Vulnerable populations. So when you're working with vulnerable populations, and who's considered vulnerable population? Sorry? It can be, so it can be coercive with the money. Pregnant women.
And children.
children, prisoners, so we do say prisoners. We can have that here at WV with having the state facility and having a lot of correction places around here. We've had a couple prisoners I know through the cancer center that we've worked through with clinical trials. So you want to make sure that you're addressing anybody that may have
Experience.
Yep, and going back and working with your IRB on that. Also, if English isn't their primary language, you want to look for that for translation services that you may have to have. Make sure that you're just keeping up to date. There are some changes. I know with GCP, FDA regulations, they'll do updates with that. So just making sure that you understand any new guidance documents that are out there as well. Monitoring and routine auditing. And this is where we're talking about your sponsors, and your sponsor talk will kind of go over this too. They'll do routine. It's their responsibility to make sure that your study is going along the lines. So they'll come in and review accuracy and safety of your data and your subjects, and your sort of regulatory compliance issues. Usually monitoring visits are every 6 to 8 weeks or so for a day or two, depending on how you enroll. Sometimes they could come in more frequently. Sometimes it could be quarterly, every 6 months. It really depends on your complexity of your protocol and how your recruitment's doing, and then also whatever they may set up with their sponsor. How many people are doing remote monitoring? Well, you guys are probably doing monitoring now. Have you done remote monitoring?
Well, not in the sense of the monitor actually getting into Epic, which is possible. We haven't done that.
Yeah, we have not allowed remote access to Epic either. We find there are CMA guys, if you want to have Epic access, we want you on site. But you know they have CMA problems usually when they try and sign on to Epic as it is. And we want to just keep it that simple. But we'll do some remote monitoring. Mostly red, we'll do a lot of remote monitoring on the regulatory advisor side and make sure that we have licensures and things up to date. How about risk-based monitoring? Anybody familiar with the term risk-based monitoring?
It's almost as quality control, right? These days.
So risk-based monitoring is this new theory that's out there that's been around for a couple of years, and I think a lot of us are like, oh, they don't have one. They really will never do that. Well, as budgets get tighter, risk-based monitoring sounds even better to these sponsors and CROs. Risk-based monitoring they'll usually come on, like for us on the cancer side, what we see in risk-based, I know this doesn't happen with everybody, is that they'll come on site and do a monitoring visit for the first patient and see how we're doing. And if we seem to be doing okay with that first patient or that first cycle of treatment, whatever they define, and we seem to understand the protocol and do that, then you'll see that they'll start supplementing remote monitoring visits or just doing spot data checks from here, and they won't be coming in and doing 100% source data verification of every element on every patient. So if you are a site that maybe has a lot of queries to that first patient and you've had some errors in your dosing, they'll continue to come to your site and do in-person monitoring and 100% source documentation. But if you're a high-functioning, high-level site, those visits will decrease. Those are new regulations that are out there. There's a lot of talks out there about risk-based monitoring. I'm not sure if SOFR is going to be that contemporary to bring it in on what that is, but I think, is there GCP guidance on it?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think there are some different guidances out there on risk-based monitoring for the sponsor side. I don't know if there is anything on the site side out there yet. Make sure, FDA audits FDA will come to you for your final equivalency bioavailability inspections that like the CFRC conducts. But they also, for 21 CFR Part 312, FDA auditors can come and visit a study site really whenever they want to. They can just do a random routine audit, or they can do what we have usually we're more fearful of, or the for-cause audits. And that's when we think that there might be a problem with the study, any scientific integrity question or protection of your patient welfare for that. For-cause audits you usually get if you're also a really high enroller compared to other sites. So if you put on 20 patients of a 100 subject trial, and it took 20 sites to put the other 80 on, then they may come make a visit to you saying, are you really putting on the right patients for this trial? If you have just a lot of issues and safety issues reporting, that may generate a for-cause audit. It just talks about making sure when you have a correct action plan that you're not just talking about what happened, but what your plan is for your future. All right, I have 3 minutes. On time. So financial stewardship. This is your study budget and your resources. Make sure that you're talking with your principal investigator. There really aren't a lot of FDA regulations about financial stewardship and contracting. Making sure, of course, the patients aren't coerced into what they're getting paid for to do the study. But this really is just you as a coordinator, your responsibility in conducting that trial to make sure that you're adequately getting paid. Also, that you're adequately approving or billing to insurance what you can through what we call a Medicare coverage analysis. And that really is for any clinical research studies that we know you may be enrolling Medicare, Medicaid eligible patients, and then determining what is considered standard of care and what has to be billed to the research sponsor of the study. This talks a little bit more about Medicare qualifying clinical trial. I don't know that Soka really is going to go into this too much, but it really is saying that Medicare and most insurance companies are following that by the ACA laws, that they'll cover the routine cost of a qualifying trial. And a qualifying trial is any trial that really has a therapeutic event intent. So they're there to treat a disease that's under study. Really small type, mandatory desirable characteristics. If you're interested, lots of information out there on the internet about Medicare, Medicare coverage analysis. And I know ACRP just did a webcast on our site the last 2 weeks about this as well. Okay, I'm not really going to go through this. Did someone talk to you guys about investigational drug? Okay. I'm going to put some slides here because this could come up. The FDA regulations, you can read these on your own. 312.6 about labeling. 312.57 about record keeping and record retention. Unused drug, control of drug, and then inspection of that. So these are all FDA guidelines. If you're going to do an international study, then these are the cross-references over to the ICH guidelines for that as well. Investigational drug services is what we use here on our site. So there, most of you, if you're using a drug agent, they'll do all your control and preparation dispensing. But you as a coordinator, if you don't have a pharmacy, this is what SOPRA may ask you about. If you have any sort of investigational drug, you have to make sure that you have a drug accountability record form. That DARF is going to be per your protocol for each agent that you're working with and each concentration of that agent. So a separate one, if you're getting the same drug at 50 milligram and 10 milligram pills, each one will have its own form. It falls within the same record retaining policy as it does for all your other regulatory documents. Make sure that you keep all your records in line with the same, the date that you dispense it, and also when it's returned back to you. Labeling. This talks about FDA labeling regulations. It's a little wordy, a little busy, but the biggest thing here is to make sure that anything is labeled has that statement, caution, new drug limited by federal or U.S. law to investigational use. So it's clearly identified that's an investigational drug, and it can't have anything else that's related, any sort of false or misleading information. This is standardly what's required to be on a label, that you have to make sure who's it going to, your subject identifier, like a standard script when you go to the pharmacy, what your name of drug is, what your dose is, the date dispensed, how much. Very similar to a standard pharmacy dispensing label. Control. Just make sure that investigational product is only administered to those that are enrolled on the trial by that investigator. Storage. How's investigational product have to be stored?
Controlled temperature.
And what determines control?
Humidity and heat controls and being behind a locked door. Access by at least 2, right?
At least 2. Yep, exactly.
I know it was in there.
Yep. So you want 2 locks. So if it's a locked room, locked cabinet, that suffices. If it's a badge-coded room and locked cabinet, that suffices. But you don't want it to be badge access room and then just an open cabinet. It has to have a dual barrier for that. Temp logs, temp controls have to be in there as well as also what's recommended, not by regulation, not required, but recommended that you have some sort of electronic monitoring system that if you are out of the temperature zone, there's an alert when it's out of range. Unused drug, return of the drug. So you want to make sure that some sponsors will make you return it. A lot of sponsors will allow you to have a local destruction policy. These regs are just talking about that drug has to be returned when the study is close to accrual, all patients have completed therapy, if there was a temp excursion, or if it's expired. But the policy does allow local destruction for that too. Unopened vials, anything within 90 days of closure. Usually, if it's a dangerous good, they will not allow you to reshift it. So if it's a live virus vector, once it's at your site, you're not going to be moving that along again. You'll definitely destroy it on site. But then just make sure you have up-to-date local policy on that. Let's talk about monitoring. That's a sponsor requirement that they'll have to come and monitor. If a commercial agent is used instead of investigational agent. So let's say you have a drug, you have an oral drug or just an anti-inflammatory drug, and they go out and they take their own, what they have in their bottle at home instead of giving you the investigational supply. So what do you do? All right, so you want to make sure your PI knows. You can't sit there. Actually, let me give you a different example. That's not a great one compared to the ones I have up here on this slide. We're in the pharmacy, and we have a trial using a drug in breast cancer. It's already approved by FDA and out there called Herceptin. The study is actually the sponsor is also giving us Herceptin, just because we're using a little bit of a different population than what it was approved and labeled for. The pharmacist goes and pulls the commercial supply, Herceptin, is that a protocol deviation? Yes. Yes. Okay, we know that because it's not using investigational supply. Can you take that commercial supply and put it in your investigational stock? No. All right. So have to make sure that you're using the right label drug and the right thing, and that you're working with the new pharmacist, that they understand when patients are on study and they can account for all of their drug line. Same thing if you use investigational product instead of commercial agent. It can go through the same thing. All right, now I'm over. These are our review questions that I'm going to give to you. True or false? Worldwide regulations and guidelines define the role of investigators. That's true. That's what we're talking about. All right. Second question, define the role of study coordinators. We already talked about that earlier. No. That's when we have this whole delineation of what is really being regulated. It is the investigator's responsibility to obtain IRB approval, but most delegate this to the study coordinator. True. The IRB needs to see the case report form in order to approve the study.
False.
False. Good. The sponsor will usually supply all forms needed for tracking. False. The study coordinator can train the study team in various aspects. True. The investigator must ensure that any deviations are clearly documented and corrected as soon as possible.
True.
After a referred patient is accepted into the study, the investigator is no longer responsible for maintaining contact with the referring physician.
False.
Why is that? You always want to make sure that you have that good communication. If you have a patient on a study, you want to go back to the referring physician so they know what's putting a treatment for the safety of the subject. So they have that constant. If the patient comes in and says, oh, I'm going to go see my primary care doctor because I think I have a cold, and that possibly could have been something that's related to that drug, you want to make sure you're maintaining that line of communication with them. All right, so what is a regular duty for you as a study coordinator versus what's delegated? Obtaining prior approval of form consent documents from the IRB. That's a delegated or a regular duty. Rejecting a subject for enrollment in the study because the medical history includes a condition listed. Scheduling appointments for intake interviews, entering data, administering the test article, drafting news releases and advertisements, sending reports concerning serious and unexpected events, maintaining an inventory of the test article received, used, and remaining in stock. What is considered a regular duty? Mm-hmm.
Entering data,
Mm-hmm.
administering the test article.
Scheduling your appointments, entering your data, directing sort of news releases, that's not really a federal regulation thing. Delegated duty prior regulations, obtaining your consent, doing your enrollment, administering the test article, considering serious unexpected events, and the inventory of drug.